Hello. I just want to point out here, it's just really funny. They know that you guys are all into class consciousness. Like, they even want you to worship them. Like, how dare you not to worship us, our murder, pedophile, rapist system? Because that's what capitalism. Do you want me to prove it to you? I mean, I've been proving it for the past 3 years, and all my channels and all my. If you need more information, go check out my Telegram. Go check out all the links in, you know where. You should go read this article. It's their own article to promote their own company. This sick parasitic energy. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can see the demented parasitic energy. Do you see that? Like, ew. Yeah, there's Israel apartheid hang in Côte St. Luc, Cavendish, Kildare. On that side, over here, I don't know if you can see it, is a mall or something like that. On this side is a bank, is a library on the corner over there. So this is how they do it. This is how they invade. This is how they do it. They put the motherfucking hate, genocidal apartheid fucking flag, and this is how they invade and colonize. And we have Zionist people, landlords and pieces of shit who are here. Some of them are billionaires here, and yeah, they justifying this shit. Why they don't put the flag of Palestine? Why not Palestine? Why not Congo or Sudan? All the things that Canada is oppressing. Why? Because Canada, Montreal, Quebec is a settler colony, right? Why not put indigenous, you know what I'm saying? No. They're letting us know that this is their territory, that if anything or anyone says or does anything that too bad for you, you're being anti-Semitic. This is not being anti-Semitic. This is literally a boundary, and this is fucked up. This is for all us who are against this fucking bullshit. Sorry, I have to voice this out because our morning is completely ruined watching that stupid ass fucking flag. For a lot of us, it's fucking genocide that we see, is PTSD. For some of you, if there's people who survive genocide who live in Canada or live in Montreal or Quebec, this is why they're trying to block the immigration and stuff like that, because they know they don't want, they already established that they're gonna colonize this Montreal, Quebec. They're gonna be here, and a lot of you, if this makes you uncomfortable, that means you're comfortable with what they're doing, with their society, what they believe. That you think that genocide is okay. You think that rapist society and pedophilia, because that's what all the pedophiles, when they get convicted in any other country, that's where they go. They go high in Israel, right? But just because they have money, billionaires, and then they're supported by their fucking little community of fucking deprived parasitic energy, it's okay, right? Which also, by the way, it makes Jewish people more in danger. Like the real Jews who are anti-Zionists, having these fucking flags and stuff like that, they are more in danger from Zionists. Because Zionists can't stand anti-Zionist people. The real Jews, you know? Because at the end of the day, these people are fucking liars and fake as fuck. And a lot of you, this is why I'm saying, like, I condemn that. Sanctuary Israel, stop putting the fucking flags in our fucking faces, creating this dystopian energy that we don't want. Like, for real, fuck Israel, fuck that shit. And we need to be saying this constantly, because fuck this shit. We don't need to be waking up in the morning and literally, for especially, that's what they're doing. They're trying to torment a lot of you who know the truth. They're trying to torment you. That's what they're doing it. They're doing to also save their reputation, because they feel like they think that a lot of people don't know what they have done or they've been doing. They think there's people are not. No, we are educated. Canadians are very educated. Use your education. It's your weapon. The truth is your motherfucking weapon against this. The truth is their fucking kryptonite, because they're fucking liars. They're genocidal and they're psychopath. Fuck that. Get the fuck out. Get this flags out. If you don't like it, you go back to your fucking Occupy fucking, not even. Go back to Europe. Go back to colonizer. Go back to where you belong. That's it. A lot of you, they're projecting to a lot of you like, oh, immigrants are the problems. Oh, blah, blah, blah. No, it's because we don't want to conform to their fucking abuse. They're land theft. They're thieves. And they want to normalize that because, oh, they're there. They're white and so, too bad. Don't conform to the shit. Revolt. You're supposed to be revolting. Have a nice day. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, y que viva la resistencia.
Anyways, it has taken me forever to do this video, but since I'm filming on this day, I need you guys to remember the Nakba. May 15 in 1948, occupied Palestine, colonized by on 14th of May 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the executive head of the World Zionist Organization, declared the establishment of the State of Israel. Israeli marks the event as their Independence Day. Not really. Ever since the 15th of May has been remembered international as Nakba Day. So, Nakba Day commemorates the forced displacement of more than half the Palestinian population. 750,000 Palestinians were driven out of their homes and into refugee camps. The catastrophe later became the longest running refugee crisis in the modern era. Days also mark the Palestinian communities across the world in remembrance of the brutal end of the 3 decades of struggle for Palestinian self-determination in historic Palestine. The right to self-rule was denied first by the British and then squashed by a new Israeli state. Subscribing to the Zionist ideology, the Israel state with exclusive claims to the land for the Jewish people was ideologically opposed to accommodating the vast majority of the inhabitants of Palestine. If you look at my Telegram, the Nakba still hasn't ended. We're still at it. This is why there's 78 years now of the Nakba. So all of those who have been saying 77 years of colonization, colonized Palestine, is now 78 years. But let me continue with the article so I can show you that one of the key players to keep this going. So I want to remind you, all of y'all, that Gaza did expose every racist, every Islamophobe, every narcissist, every fake Christian, Zionist motherfuckers, pedophiles too, yeah, because most of them are billionaires, oligarchs, and your landlords. A lot of you don't want to, all your politicians as well, they're all in it. All of it. Every fake Muslim and every heartless individual on the face of this evil earth. I want to rephrase the evil earth because the earth is not evil. She's divine, she's created, she's empress energy, she's matriarchy energy. She's supposed to be in a matriarchy society so she can continue thriving. But guess the patriarchy, can have that. So the evil is brought by that energy, misogyny, colonialism, capitalism. We're meant to build socialist, communist communities and systems that thrives women and children, protects them, right? This is why we have distorted divine masculine. They're supposed to be divine, but they're not acting divine. They're in this energy right now. And most of they're the culprits of enabling this type of abuse, so let's not forget that. So I want to clarify the key points where it says that Lucky Martin and the words matter. So you have to pay attention to the words because they're using words and all kinds of terms to continue their slaughtering and the colonization and continue a system that it's not sustainable for nobody, right? But education, it is elevation and also liberation. Also, you gotta work smart and strategic because now you know that the surveillance is increasing, the censorship is increasing, so now we have to work in different ways. This is why we need community and unions and unity, and but a lot of you're like glamorizing this like community thing, which is like, and then thinking the resistance is not gonna be like when we literally, I'm showing you on Telegram how violent these people are, right? And then you're expecting the resistance not going to be. Please read evolutionary books. Go check out my writersif.com. There's a bookshop there. There's decolonization books for you. Go read books about the Nakba. Go read your stuff. These people, they write the little articles. They have the little minions, the little agents, the little entities to create propaganda, create lies and bullshit, kakalaka, and also promote themselves. Like, make themselves like the winners. Like, significant. Lockheed Martin CEO perceived the current defense climate as a significant opportunity for the company. They see genocide, killing, slaughtering children, bombing in Iran, right? And what's going on in Lebanon. That not a lot of information is out there, but it's on my Telegram. That's another thing. A lot of these people think that a lot of you don't have emotional intelligence. You can't grab a book or you can't read what right between the lines, you know? Also, that article that it just a lot of you are like, oh, New York Times just finally published what you're talking about. Yeah, do you read just the beginning, the second paragraph where they're putting lies and propaganda within the truth? There's the truth that Palestinian prisoners have been dealing with sexual assault, rape, and all that stuff. We've been voicing this out for me because 4 or 5 years, but people have been doing this, like voicing this out, and this is like a systemic, normal thing. Like, literally, there are articles that suggest that it's not the first time. It's just that finally the New York Times needs to recover from their embarrassment because these people are consent genocidal mongrels, right? They always have been. So they're trying to cover their ass. But now it's like, oh, but it's a distraction. Just watch how distracted, like, now Satiero is going to sue New York Times, but it's like, because what, their narrative, their help, like, yeah, that's it. The narrative is dying. And this is not the first article. This is something that they do. It's their policy. So let's keep that logical for real. And it's horrific and it's vile. And we need to voice this out. Continue speaking out for the Palestinian prisoners. They're not prisoners. They're hostages in these prisoner dungeons who now have to deal with the fact that now they have to deal with the death penalty now, which that's something that all of us should be enraged and advocating and saying no to that shit. But let me tell you why this is important for this motherfucker, or at least he's one of the diabolical demons. The company sees steady revenue, but a profit misdue to programs slow down. So slow down, what I mean is it's resistance, protesting, boycotting, and doing all this stuff, exposing them, right? There's a phrase that doesn't come up often, defense contractor earning calls gold opportunity. Golden opportunity is the kind of language gets people's attention. Lockheed Martin CEO Jim Tackled, whatever his name is. The Iran war driving Pentagon spending, a Trump administration that has requested a record $1.5 trillion defense budget, and a Defense Department leadership openly willing to restructure how it does business with contractor Tackled, whatever his name is, told investors the timing couldn't be better. This is a golden opportunity right now based on who is in government. They're literally telling you what's up. He said their experience, their willingness to change, the demand that they have for what we do and what our partners in our industry do. For a company that derives 73% of its revenue from the federal government, according to the University of Iowa, and 65% from the Department of Defense alone, those two words, golden opportunity, represent not just optimism, but a business thesis. Lockheed Martin's Pentagon ties shift town towards commercial model. Oh. If for whatever reason the government decides the production rate won't be as high in year 5, 6, or whatever, there is an change in Congress that changes how this agreement can be appropriate. Then there are reach back or clack back mechanism to make the company whole. Oh, I'm going to do part 2.
You laugh at someone for opposing genocide? Let me explain. Last week, the pro-Palestinian activist 𝓀𝆃It spoke at a meeting of borough mayors and councillors from across the island. Specifically, he wanted to ask Montreal Mayor Soraya Martinez Ferrada, if she would support a motion for the city to boycott suppliers connected to the Netanyahu regime in Israel. Saltiel spoke about the new death penalty law in Israel that only applies to Palestinians and other examples of how Israel is an apartheid state, at least according to the United Nations, Oxfam, Doctors Without Border, B'Tselem, and every major human rights organization in the world. I spoke to Saltiel afterwards, who told me that during his question, the mayor of Côte Saint-Luc started laughing at him.
One of your councilmen laughed at me while I was asking my question.
For once, I hope that you feel respected in this council.
He's still laughing, ma'am. He's still laughing.
Now, we've reached out to David Torjman. He's the mayor of Côte Saint-Luc. He's the man who allegedly laughed at Zev. He hasn't gotten back to us. But Zev was unequivocal when I spoke to him, saying, look, he smiled at me, he laughed at me, he thought it was a funny joke. Here's some important context. Zev Saltiel is Jewish. He belongs to a group called Jewish Voices for Peace, Independent Jewish Voices, but he is in favor of Palestinian statehood and a country where Palestinians aren't systematically repressed. David Torjman is also Jewish, and in his campaigning, he has cited a rise in anti-Semitism since October 7th, a feeling of unease in the community. But that perspective, David Torjman's perspective, often negates the perspective of the growing number of young Jewish Montrealers who are not down with the Zionist project. When she was approached about whether or not to boycott Israeli contractors, Soraya Martinez Ferrada basically said, look, it's none of my business, I'm staying out of it. Neutrality in the face of injustice will always side with the oppressor. And the problem is, a lot of Canada's political class is either neutral or will only very gently condemn Israel and then back off, at a time when a vast majority of Canadians are against what's happening in Gaza and in Iran. The latest poll by 𝂀𝆃It shows that only 22% of Canadians have a favorable view of Israel. Previous polls show that a majority of Canadians think that a genocide is ongoing in Gaza. So when you laugh at someone like Zev Saltiel and you treat them like they are saying something ridiculous, like they should be outright dismissed, then you are laughing at the majority of Canadians. And you are espousing an increasingly fringe political view, which is that Israel should be allowed to do whatever it wants, and that any notion to the contrary is going to be conflated with anti-Semitism. To the mayor's credit, she encouraged Zev to file a complaint, and she said she wants him to feel respected. But this whole notion of being neutral in the face of what's happening or not wanting to get involved, that's a little too late for that.
Hey, just a reminder, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, etc., they are all religions that you choose. They are beliefs that people subscribe to. So if your religion or faith is hiding behind this belief system to justify the murder of men, women, children, and babies, or to justify dogs raping people to death, or babies being tortured for 10 hours, or people celebrating murder, or teenagers being set on fire, or the forced starvation of an entire people, or children being kidnapped by men with guns, or people holding the remains of their loved ones in grocery bags, then I'm going to straight up say that your religion is fucked. Beyond fucked. It's demonic. And if that makes me anti-Semitic to say that, then call me anti-fucking-Semitic, because I am so over it. I am sick of tiptoeing around the fact that Israel is committing genocide and using Judaism to justify it. Judaism is a belief system that people subscribe to. Zionism is a political ideology that people subscribe to. Both are by choice. Not the color of their skin, not their sexuality, not their gender. These are belief systems and ideologies that people choose. And people who choose these beliefs are fair fucking game for criticism. People are being slaughtered. So if your made-up homelands, genocidal leaders are committing the most despicable crimes against humanity and claiming that Zionism is Judaism, then unless you say it's not, I will happily criticize both. Because I'm done with this fucking shit. This fear that by saying that murder is bad somehow makes me anti-Jew. I'm not anti-Jew. I am anti-genocide. I am anti-murder. I am anti-babies being fucking tortured. It's so straightforward, all of this. And no, not all Jews. Not at all. I know many Jewish people who are anti-Zionist and are condemning Israel, but as a faith, it is really hard to understand why this isn't being collectively condemned by every single fucking one of you. It makes you look pretty fucking awful. So prove me wrong. If Jews believe that genocide is wrong, that torturing babies is wrong, that dogs raping people to death is wrong, prove it and fucking say something. Otherwise, I'm going to assume something is pathologically fucking wrong with you. And I think that's a pretty fair fucking assessment. Fuck Israel. Free Palestine.
When you call my name, it's like a little wet. I'm down on my knees. I wanna take you there. In the midnight hour, I can feel your power. Just like a friend, you know I'll take you there. When you call my name, it's like a little wet.
Build Canada strong. Those are the three words that helped elect Mark Carney Prime Minister. And as recently as a couple of weeks ago, Carney was referring to Canada's relationship with the US military and our reliance on them to supply us with weapons as a source of weakness. Well, that's all well and good, but are we really moving away from the Americans when the United States military is funding a $682 million expansion of the General Dynamics plant in Salaberry to Valleyfield? In Aina Mackey's latest article for The Rover, we took a look at this plan. General Dynamics produces the propellant that fuels 155 millimeter shells manufactured in the United States. Those shells are then exported to Israel and used by the IDF in Gaza, where at least 21,000 children have been killed since October 7, 2023. These are artillery shells. They're incredibly lethal. They are used to destroy tanks. They're used in the Russia-Ukraine war. They're used in southern Lebanon. And when they hit a refugee camp or a bakery or someone's house, they're incredibly lethal. And we're helping send those to Israel via the United States. Now, in its official statements, the Canadian government says, look, we don't supply any weapons to the IDF, but because of our very special relationship with the United States, once we send weapons to the American military, we don't ask where the weapons end up. And in this case, they happen to end up in the hands of a military that is on trial for genocide at the International Court of Justice. This is an army that is accused of using starvation as a weapon of war, of targeting refugee camps, killing kids. This thing where we send weapons to the States and don't track where they end up, it's called the U.S. loophole. And the New Democratic Party put forward a bill, C-233, to try to close that loophole. It was opposed by the Liberals, the Conservatives, and Bloc Québécois members of Parliament who believe that the financial benefits of this investment in our economy by the U.S. military outweigh the negative consequences. I suppose our morals do have a price. NDP Member of Parliament Alexandre Boulris told Aina Mackey for this story something that I think we should all remember. I don't think it's a good idea to be complicit in genocide or crimes against humanity. You would think that is a very simple kind of principle, but in practice, it seems this government is really bending over backwards not to have to make difficult decisions where our financial and moral interests collide. Check it out at therover.ca. Also, the only reason we know about this is because there was a public consultation about the environmental effects that this expansion would have. They're not good, by the way. And we were tipped off about this by an activist called Leela Woods, who attended the consultation and made her thoughts known. Thank you.
And I used to have this mental illness where I thought logical arguments would change people's mind.
Woman of color feminist Sarah Ahmed wrote this piece called Evidence that I use a lot in my work and teachings, in which the premise of it is saying that the reason why in these institutions the evidence of sexism and racism never seems to be enough to upend those systems, it's because of the racism and sexism embedded within these institutional structures to begin with. We'll never be able to believe that evidence. So the more you provide, the more it will move that floor and gaslight you into performing for it, extracting you of your labor, of your source, of your intelligence. And then what happens? You feel fucking crazy. You think that it's your responsibility to teach somebody something that they refuse to actually learn, to actually know, to actually grow, because they have no capacity to do so, right? And that is what is the foundation of this nation, y'all, is incompetence and ignorance dressed up as somehow intelligence and innovation, because that is the plantationist system. That is what racial capitalism is. It needs other people to be dehumanized, therefore devalued, but it actually needs your value via your labor while telling you somehow you're incompetent. And does that shit make any sense, y'all? When you pull back, really, does that make any goddamn sense? Because if I was so incompetent, if I was so less than, if I was so uncivilized, then why the fuck did you need those of us and our ancestors' backs to build these so-called civilized places that are now crumbling at our feet? So don't buy into the lie, y'all. The evidence will never get you what you want. You gotta believe your oppressor and then operate from that.
I'm a Gen Z and I am no longer passionate about anything. I've only been alive for less than 3 decades and I've already lost almost all will to live and passion and drive. Why? Because America and American capitalism has put lifestyle behind a paywall. America says that we are so burdened, we the people are so burdened with human life that we must benefit from the existence of all of you people. So the least you all could do is be cogs in our machines, aka funnel money into billionaire businesses. So we'd find some of you worthy of keeping alive. That's why livable wage isn't easily accessible. We don't want all of you to stay alive. We don't like it's a lot of y'all. It's too many of y'all. It's just enough that it's enough to keep us rich, but it's too many for us to like have to care about all of y'all because all of y'all aren't billionaires. All of y'all aren't even millionaires. Most of y'all aren't even middle class. Why the fuck? I think that's what pisses me off the most about like the political state of America is that I want them to just straight up say like, hey, we're evil. Like, hey, the reason why everything's so expensive is because we don't want y'all to be able to afford to stay alive. Like we're even increasing the price of sustenance like food and shelter because we don't want y'all to stay alive. We've literally made it illegal to be homeless because we want y'all to kill yourselves. We don't want y'all to stay alive. Please die. Please stop asking us to make everything affordable. We want y'all to starve to death. I want them to just say that because this game of like bootstraps, fucking lazy, entitled Gen Z, or the way older generations refuse to take any accountability for the life that Gen Z now has to live and will instead jump through hoops to gaslight millennials and Gen Z into being like, actually, you all have it way easier than we did. So we have no idea what y'all are complaining about. When I was your age, I paid off my house and my car just being the milkman. Y'all just refused to go get jobs. Oh, jobs don't pay a livable.
This is Kevin Roberts. He's not a politician. He's from the state of Louisiana. He built his life's work around African American history and the kinship of Black Americans. His thesis is on the transatlantic slave trade and the kinship of African Americans. Do you know who he is? This is Kevin Roberts. This is Kevin Roberts. This is Project 2025. And I need us to connect the dots. A man who built his academic journey from his bachelor's to his master's to his PhD to studying African American history and the kinship of African Americans put together Project 2025. Which means he studied us, he understood our history, and then he took that, wrote a thesis about it, and built Project 2025 to disenfranchise us. He literally used our own history against us. So what you are seeing with the rolling back of rights, targeting DEI, firing over 600,000 Black women, what you are seeing is very much so intention. The dedication it takes for you to start in the 90s of studying Black people only to disenfranchise them almost 30 years later. Matter of fact, it is 30 years later. That is the long game this man has played. Because he got his bachelor's in history in 1996. Do you know how evil you have to be to utilize racism through the study of a people that you want to disenfranchise? They're not stopping at Jim Crow. This man literally put this book together and put it online for free. Something that people thought we were fear-mongering about. He put it online for free to show his life's work. And he's using policy to push it through. I don't think people are grasping. How do you study a people just to disenfranchise them through policy? You make it your life's mission. This is only the beginning. The intention is to take us all the way back. And he did it with research. That's a next level of evil.
Why would anybody stage a mock execution of a politician? Weirdly, that is the question no one seems to be asking in the aftermath of all of this pearl clutching and outrage over the decision by Alliance Ouvrière to build a guillotine and fake execute a papier-mâché version of Labour Minister Jean Boulet. My name is Christopher Curtis, this is The Rover, and I am not holding a tiny microphone, it's regular sized, I'm just huge. Last year, 257 workers died on the job in Quebec. That's a 25% increase compared to 2021. Homelessness has basically doubled under the CAQ. Evictions have increased sixfold, or at least they did between 2020 and 2023 under the CAQ. People are being pushed to their limits. But for some reason, that doesn't enter into the discussion. These workers, they're dying on factory floors, they're dying in farms, they're dying on construction sites, they're dying by the highway, they're dying from diseases they catch working in unsafe working environments. And most of these people who die, well, they live on the margins. They're poor. They don't have a union. Or when there are rules, the rules aren't being respected. And the government doesn't do very much to stop this because it keeps happening. According to Health Canada, you are 2.7 times more likely to take your own life if you experience social isolation or material deprivation. Those are two things that happen when you're homeless or when you're poor. This government has made it easier for landlords to evict their tenants. This government has further privatized the healthcare system, making vulnerable people have access to less quality care and bringing them closer to death. During a time where 645 people die every year of an overdose in Quebec, which is huge compared to before the pandemic, the government dragged its feet on coming up with a new overdose prevention plan. Knowing that poverty puts us at a higher risk of killing ourselves, it's also important to consider that last year, about 100 families every day were declaring bankruptcy or filing for bankruptcy. That was a 5% increase year over year. People are in crisis. People are angry. People are desperate. So am I surprised that people made a papier-mâché figure of a cabinet minister who has openly mocked immigrants and has passed legislation that hurts workers? Am I surprised they did that? No, I'm not surprised at all. People should be asking themselves why they did it. They should be questioning it. And while I think it's totally valid for people to say, hey, that's really violent, I don't like that, yeah, absolutely. Say it out loud, scream it if you want to. And in Jean Boulet's case, the minister is filing a complaint with the police. They're going to investigate it. That's his right. I don't think they're going to get a conviction, but you never know. In any case, over here at The Rover, we will be speaking with one of the organizers of this mock execution. We're going to do an on-camera interview, a long interview. I'm not sure if it'll be in French or English. Probably in French. Anyways, if you have any questions you'd like to ask or any concerns, please raise them in the comments. Let me know. We are going to do our best to have a hopefully constructive and rigorous discussion about this. God bless. My hands are huge.
Hey everyone, I want to talk about the stabbings in Golders Green that happened in London a few days ago. I hope that the two Jewish victims, Shloimeh Rand and Moshe Shine, are okay and will recover. And I hope that the Muslim man, Ismail Hussein, that he also stabbed, is also okay. Now, you wouldn't be faulted for thinking that there were only two victims, and you wouldn't be faulted for thinking that the only victims were Jewish. That's because if you look at any of the legacy media headlines, like BBC, like PBS, like Times of Israel, like Global News, all of the headlines say the same thing. And this is why people trust independent media more than they trust legacy media. And I want you to think for a second, why is legacy media not telling you about that third Muslim man? The reason why is because the UK government is planning to use this incident as a reason to completely stifle all protests against the genocide, all protests against Israeli war crimes.
On anti-Semitic attacks. So there is a stronger deterrence factor, as we do with riots.
And if they said that there was a third man who was Muslim, that would not fit with the narrative. Because what they're also trying to do is somehow connect it or plausibly make people think that there is some connection to Iran. Yes, Iran.
To tackle the malign threat posed by states like Iran.
Somehow Iran made this guy try to stab a Muslim man that he knows and then stab two Jewish people that he doesn't know. That has everything to do with Iran and nothing to do with what I assume is some sort of mental health crisis based on his medical history. But using this incident as a reason to stop protests against Israel, do you see what's happening? It makes that connection between Israel and Judaism even more pronounced. And I would say this makes Jewish people even less safe. I'm not removing accountability for anyone who harms a Jewish person simply because they look visibly Jewish. But I am saying specifically, it is this conflation that Israel and Zionists and supporters of Zionism make between Israel and Judaism that is making Jewish people less and less and less safe all around the world. And to conclude, I want you to watch this amazing British rabbi and what he tells Owen Jones.
It is very disturbing that politicians are using Jewish suffering as a weaponized lever for their own pet projects. That people are weaponizing Jews and weaponizing Jewish suffering to deny people their very basic human rights.
If we want the best case scenario for humanity's future, we got to get a whole lot more negative about the present really quick. I don't mean negative about human potential or your own personal potential. I mean about the systems that are currently operating, which are obviously anti-human life and dignity. There's a theory that's very simple called the purpose of a system is what it does. Meaning, if things are bad, it's because they are designed to be bad. And I give you the point of AI. I personally am very critical of AI because I've noticed that every system that AI enters gets worse. This is by design. The people who created AI want it to be worse because they want people to have to rent out intelligence. So it's good that AI makes you less skillful. They want people to be confused and isolated so that they turn to AI as a friend or a therapist. They want AI to be used for mass surveillance or military applications and pre-crime, like in the movie The Minority Report. This is very obvious to me, should be obvious to you if you live in this world, but I know people of previous generations who see AI as a positive or at least neutral thing. I know a guy who's a baby boomer who ran a company very successfully, and not just financially successfully. I mean, he really took care of his employees. He gave them good pensions, he gave them good health care, he gave them time with their family because he believed that that was the best thing for them and their productivity. And I'm like, look, the state of the world, I understand if they made a few tweaks, they could all be working that way, but they don't want to work that way. They want people sick and depressed. They want to use AI to cut jobs, not to enhance jobs. And I give them the examples that I've been talking about on here about how doctors who use AI get worse at being doctors by using AI. And he's like, the healthcare system needs an upgrade. Doctors need more time with their patients. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not how it's going to be used. The healthcare system as it stands is going to use AI to give doctors less time with their patients. Doctors are going to get worse at their jobs. People are going to get sicker so that the pharmaceutical companies can benefit. No, yes. That's the way it's being used. We give them the example of graphic design. They're using graphic design AI to make things simpler but less creative and to suppress wages of experts in that field. No. Yes. That's how it's being used. And he gave the example of bridge inspectors, which I'm not an expert in, and I know he's not either, but he's heard that bridge inspectors can use AI to do 9 people's jobs in one, and then they can devote their effort to improving these bridges. But I'm like, why aren't the bridges being improved then? Our infrastructure is crumbling. So why is that? Because they don't actually want to repair the bridges. They could do a New Deal thing. The federal government could put money into making our infrastructure better tomorrow. But they don't want that. They don't care. Yes, it could be used for all of this human flourishing, but it won't be because the people in charge want to make people homeless, so they go to prison, so they can be used for free labor because that is the loophole in the 13th Amendment. No. Yes. We have to be honest about why things are the way they are because the people in charge want them to be, and those people are the problem.
Don't you just hate it when you have to clean up your public image after exterminating 22,000 children? Israel is pouring $730 million into public diplomacy or hasbara to deal with its reputational crisis. This is almost 5 times the amount that Israel spent on PR last year, which was already almost 20 times the amount that it spent before October 7, 2023. Between 2022 and 2026, Israel has increased its spending on propaganda by around 9,600%. This is as every reputable international human rights and legal body is an agreement that Israel is in violation of the UN Convention on Apartheid, the UN Convention on Genocide, and the UN Convention on Torture, where torture, including sexual violence and rape, has become state doctrine in Israel. Israel has pushed back human development in the Gaza Strip by 77 years, with the Human Development Index projected to collapse to the lowest levels ever seen in the Gaza Strip. Israel has killed more journalists on record than any other state on the planet. I could keep going. When Israel is reminded of its obligations under international law, rather than choosing to no longer annihilate people and steal their homes, it is choosing to mount an unprecedented propaganda campaign. This is as Israel's finance minister is boasting that Israel has the best public health care. What he should have said is, Israel has the best public health care that is being paid for by the public of another country. If I was an American who has ever had to deal with health care in the United States, I would be furious. Everything you've ever been told about Israel has been a lie, and now Israel has increased its lying budget by 10,000%.
You can always pay to host the party, especially if you're afraid you wouldn't actually be invited. In December of last year, I wrote the pop alt column for Shameless's Smart Dumb Stuff newsletter, and that was the last line of my piece. I was talking about Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk trying to buy their way into the zeitgeist, to buy likability, and the fact that they generally use women in culture to get there. And I feel it rings true yet again today with Bezos' sponsorship of the Met Gala. Now, it's been reported that Bezos and Sanchez spent $10 million to become the lead sponsor of the event and effectively buy him an honorary chair position. But it also ruined the vibe of the event. Now, I'm not really a Met Gala supporter, but I think there's a fascinating conversation to be had here about the kind of opposite of a Midas touch that billionaires have when it comes to culture, more of like an anaphylactic reaction to cool. My perspective was heavily inspired by Australian comedian Rebecca Shaw's piece in The Guardian, which last year was an absolutely viral moment, the headline being, "It soothes my bitter heart to know that no matter how much money Elon Musk has, he will never, ever be funny." The piece is hilarious, but it's also astute. Everyone should read it. And off the back of Shaw's piece, the question that I wanted to ask is, when your wallet can control almost anything, what absences become the fixation of these men? Now, answers vary here. There's a lot of different options. It ranges from buying cultural relevance, buying better looks, to Epstein's Island. But one of the points that I think is incredibly important here is the way that these men rely on the cultural relevance and image of women in powerful public spaces to cultivate their own kind of popularity. And actually, the end result is generally that the women's reputation is harmed and the men do not become cooler. And this isn't a defense or a sympathetic viewpoint of the women that they associate with or in proximity to them. Instead, it's simply a look at how you can't buy your way to cultural relevance no matter who you cozy up to. And yeah, I am pretty proud of my last couple of paragraphs, so I am going to read this. So there's something freeing in realizing that even the billionaires helming the algorithms that influence our every move can't convince us to like them. I think it stands.
This is a follow-up to the video that I made about AI and Reese Witherspoon, where in her video she argued that, women need to get on board with AI or we're going to be left behind. Since I've made a few videos about AI, I'm starting to see the most common talking points from the pro-AI crowd that I really want to debunk and talk about further. Also, another side tangent that I will do a video about, celebrities and influencers are starting to get paid by AI companies to manufacture consent for AI because the public doesn't want it. Tech companies and AI companies are freaking out. Keep going to your local city council meetings and protesting against those AI data centers, baby, because we have the power, not these fucking corporations, okay? Let's get into the most common talking points I see. Number one, AI is inevitable. In which I ask you, did ChatGPT write that? Because I'm very confused. The sun coming up every day is inevitable. Technology, like ChatGPT, is not inevitable. We could change that at any point. These companies could fail, they could go bankrupt. We don't need to have these things. Number two, women need to get on board with AI or they're gonna get left behind. Left behind from what? Like nuclear war scenarios. Just because a woman runs her resume through ChatGPT doesn't mean it's going to get her hired. Just because a woman, runs her pitch deck through Claude doesn't mean that she's going to get VC funding. I'm not understanding this comment that if women adopt AI, it's going to lead to equality. I would love for someone to hash that out because I'm really not understanding what you're putting down. My final comment, if women control AI, we're only going to have the good AI. We're not going to have the bad AI, and we have power over that. What scenario are we living in? Because I love to be an optimist just like you, but I am not seeing a scenario where there's a mechanism in place place that could have all of this, quote, bad AI not get implemented. Because right now, if I look at the political and economic systems in America, I'm seeing a lot of income inequality. And you know what happens historically speaking if there's too much concentration of wealth in the hands of a few? Democracy breaks down. Wealth inequality now is worse than the Gilded Age. And I'm not seeing a scenario where tech CEOs and billionaires and also our politicians are going to do something to rein in this regulation out of the kindness of their heart. I'm not seeing a world where there are sufficient regulations if Donald Trump and the Republicans continue to just, like, I don't know, take money from the AI lobby and not adequately care about this. The most common thing that you're seeing from the public in America right now is that AI is being forced down our throats. In our workplaces, on our social media, on our computers, everything we touch is being ruled by AI. I am seeing scenarios where there's mass surveillance on citizens thanks to companies like Palantir. I'm seeing things like people entering psychosis because of AI and young people offing themselves because of AI. I'm seeing nudes and deepfakes and misinformation just proliferate across our social media feeds so people don't know what's real or not. I don't think that's good in terms of public trust because all of us don't already trust anything. I'm not seeing a good scenario in terms of the environment. Right now, most of our politicians are not listening to us. They are bought off by corporations and super PACs. They are taking money from these AI companies. Their pockets are lined thanks to Citizens United getting passed, where corporations are equal to people. Not seeing a route for AI to, quote, become ethical. I would love to live in some sort of dream scenario. We stop our fossil fuel dependency and we see a cure for cancer because medicine gets so good thanks to AI. I'm not seeing that scenario, unfortunately. I see that we're living in the Gilded Age and there's a very evil, unregulated technology that's in the hands of a few wealthy people that's being implemented however they want upon a citizen population that has no fucking control over it.
It's not enough to say that capitalism profits off human suffering. It manufactures perceived incompetence in order to justify further control and surveillance over the entire system. We have been propagandized that capitalism is synonymous with efficiency, but this is part of the scam so that capitalism can justify itself whether it works or whether it fails. So here's the situation. Every business's goal is to make money. It makes more money by producing a good or a service, selling it on a market, using that money to reinvest, and then sell more. Somewhere in this cyclical spiral process, the capitalists siphon out value in order to accumulate capital. Everything that ever operates like a business, i.e. exists under capitalism, operates in the same way. So when we look at public resources, things that we don't traditionally understand as being organized under the profit motive, it's a little more obvious what's happening. Hospitals, healthcare in general, are explicitly a business in America under a capitalist economy. And what that means in practice is that a hospital's job is to make money for its private owner. It gathers as many contracts as possible, tries to bring in as many patients in order to fill those contracts, employs as little labor as possible, and then accumulates as much money as possible, like any other business. Even though the hospital owners are intentionally understaffing the hospitals so that the nurses, the administrative staff, the doctors, and the social workers, and anyone else that works in these hospitals are clearly going to be overwhelmed, the hospital owners don't take accountability. Instead, they push blame onto the workers. And this is why capitalism is self-perpetuating. Because when the owners then blame the workers for being incompetent instead of being overworked, the solution is more capitalism, more surveillance, more reporting, more privatization, more capitalist control over the entire operation. This doesn't produce more efficiency, it produces more capitalist control, which effectively means a greater opportunity to siphon value from the project.
The revolution has begun. Congratulations. Mainstream media is not going to validate that for you, mind you, because they are not allowed to televise it. But you do not need these people to interpret reality for you, because you have eyes, you have ears, and you have your own mind, and it's time to start thinking for yourself. And so, using history as my guide, I am reading A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. I'm in chapter 15, titled Self-Help in Hard Times. We're going to use history as our guide today so that we can learn what revolutions are actively occurring right now, what predictable responses you can expect from the system, and who the weak links are. And the weak links are people that you do not need to waste your energy on. They exist in every era of American history. They will always be there, and they will never become you. They can't be you. That's not what they were put here to be. They are playing their role, and it's time for you to play theirs. And if we're going to make it to the other side of this revolution, of all of these revolutions, there's a few things that you need to know. I thought I was going to start with talking about all of the revolutions that are actively happening all around the globe right now, but actually, I want to talk about the weak links first. And I want to talk about this because these are the people that us revolutionaries, us educated people, those of us that are fighting on the side of humanity, we often get tripped up by these people because they pop up and it seems as if their only purpose on earth, like their only purpose in this lifetime, is to just piss us off by completely missing the point. And the reason that I want to start with weak links before I talk about everything else is you need to understand how to cope with these people, because if you get distracted by them, you're going to be really ineffectual during this revolution. So you need to keep your head in the game, and you need to stay locked in, and you need to completely ignore the weak links. They are just there to slow you down. That is a natural resistance to progress. They are playing their role. That's what they were born for. They're not necessarily doing anything wrong in life. In the world, in the universe, there has to be an equilibrium. There has to be light and shadow. There has to be good and evil. And these people are just being who they were put here to be. Necessary resistance. And it's because of this resistance that catalyzes revolutions in the first place. So you don't need to lean into these people with hate or anger. You just need to know what they are, and you need to stay woke. So we're going to start with the biggest, weakest link of all, and that's men. Men in general under patriarchy are always going to come out in droves in order to reorganize, stabilize, defend patriarchy, because they've been brainwashed into thinking that it works for them too. And they think that it works for them because they don't know what they don't know. And they've never experienced a world where they can actually be free. So they think that their chains are freedom. They think that their version of masculinity and the subordination of women in general is freedom, is power, is the way the world is supposed to be. And there are many pillars in society that support this way of thinking, including but not limited to religion. And so they're going to come out when women start our own revolution, which I'll get to that in a second. When women start revolutionizing the way that we interact with the world, men are always going to be a group of people, men in general, particularly the younger men, are always going to be a group of people that are going to be easily radicalized. Why are men easily radicalized? I have my notes. Let's check the notes. Men are easily radicalized because due to patriarchy, they often have very fragile, very empty inner worlds. They are not connected to their inner sense of self, to their inner sovereignty. They are hollowed out by patriarchy. Like I've said before, Bell Hooks talks about how patriarchy mutilates boys spiritually and emotionally from the time that they're born. And so these are very empty people that are just caught in this loop of responding to external stimuli, and they're not really led by any internal source of power, and so they're easily manipulated. And another thing that makes them easily radicalized is they are extremely protective of and defensive of masculinity, because they believe that that's really the only thing that gives them value as human beings. Again, these are men. Most men have been extremely brainwashed by patriarchy. And so they're going to see women and anybody on the side of women as their enemy, and they don't realize that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so that makes them weak links automatically. The second weakest link, white Americans. The motherfucking white people, and I'm not just talking about conservatives, I'm also talking about the liberals. And here's why. And this is no shade. I'm coming at this from a very objective, fact-based, historically backed up perspective. So I'm not coming at this in a way of shading like fuck white people. What I'm saying is white Americans are the weakest links for 3 reasons. And I'm talking to the liberals and the conservatives. Number 1, they have a low pain tolerance. They have a very, very low tolerance for discomfort of any kind. for a lack of funds. I grew up around a lot of WASP, so white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. It's a social demographic that makes up the vast majority of white Americans. These are people who are middle to upper middle class. They're usually college educated. They're typically evangelical Christians, but they can also be Jewish. Actually, not really. The Jewish are a different thing because white Anglo-Saxon Protestant is a big part of that. But they hang out with Jewish people because they are in the same tax bracket. And what WASP value more than anything is capitalism and conformity. They worship money and they worship sameness. That is their Bible. That is their culture. That's who they are. They value having all the cool gadgets, all of the latest clothes, keeping up with the latest trends. And so you guys get on here and you talk about how white girls are so unoriginal because they all dress alike and they all talk alike and da-da-da-da. You're talking about WASP specifically. You're probably not talking about the Italian girls. You're probably not talking about the poor whites. You're talking about WASP. And WASP are a weak link when it comes time for a revolution because they have a low pain tolerance. Again, they do not do well with discomfort. That's why they're always on them pills and shit. And because of their low pain tolerance, they have a very low resilience factor. Okay, this is even outside of the racism. They are just fundamentally not as strong as other communities of color and black communities because they haven't had to be. And so they haven't worked that social muscle, that cultural muscle of standing up against oppressors. They are the oppressors. They are aligned with the system. They're the cops. I'm always saying, like, white people are like the police. They will snitch on you. They will bury their heads in the sand. They'll act like it's not happening. And they'll do anything they can to preserve their comfort. Even if that means marrying somebody that they don't love. Even if that means working a job that they hate for 25 years. Because what their primary goal is comfort. And revolutions are extremely uncomfortable. So these are weak link people. And obviously it goes without saying that white Americans' allegiance to white supremacy, that tends to be the more conservative of them. White Americans' allegiance to white supremacy makes them a weak link because they are very, very easily radicalized. That's why Erica Kirk is able to get her dumb, ugly ass up there and say some shit like, we need to protect the white men in this country. And then all of these dumbass, drone-ass, zombie-ass white people in the crowd are like, yay, yeah, white men are under attack. They think they're under attack because they have a low tolerance for discomfort. And so when they feel uncomfortable, they literally think they're being attacked. Like, they equate them feeling a little uncomfortable in the present day to like black people's 400 years of oppression. They're dead ass. Like, they actually think it's the same because to them on the inside, being uncomfortable as a white man, being uncomfortable as a white woman, being uncomfortable in your little middle class house, to them, they equate that feeling. They feel as though that feels the same as a black person experiencing racism. They're delusional, but again, they're brainwashed. That's what makes them a weak link. The next weak link, religious people. My God. Bitch, my God. Religious people are one of the weakest links for several reasons. Number one, a lot of them, most of them, especially if they are Christian, speaking specifically about Christians, they have these like apocalyptic wet dreams where they're constantly jerking off to the idea of the end of days. And so when they see shit like Israel and the United States trying to bully Iran, in their minds, they don't see it that way. In their minds, they see it as a holy war that's going to usher in the return of Jesus Christ. Needless to say, they're extremely easily manipulated by the system. Okay? They're also a weak link because they are more prone to blame class warfare, anger in the collective consciousness, all of these uprisings all over the world, the decline in church numbers. They're going to blame all of that on the enemy, the devil. Okay? And they are prone to reject facts in preference of their faith. So you can see how religious people are extremely easily manipulated into doing evil shit. In the middle of a revolution, what a religious person is going to say is, well, you know, it doesn't really matter what happens here on earth. All that matters is the afterlife. These are people that are willing to sacrifice the entirety of the human race so that they can go to heaven. Stay the fuck away from these people. These are people who believe that the ends justify the means, even if the means is genocide, even if the means is pedophilia, even if the means is slavery. There are black Christians out here that believe that slavery was a good thing because it introduced Africans to Christianity. Religious people are a really weak link during a revolution because they're not going to be able to use their eyes and ears because they have been taught systematically since birth to lean not into their own understanding. And so they are going to be the ones that are the most likely to allow external forces like the mainstream media and their pastor to interpret reality for them. Weak link, gotta go. And the last weak link, I saved this one for last. I call these people house niggas, okay? The house niggas. You might also know them as happy slaves. You might also know them as boot-licking workers, okay? These people are a weak link because when the rest of us are engaged in class warfare against capitalism, these are the people that think that capitalism is good as long as you work hard. And they legitimately believe that. They fully believe that capitalism is a good system. You're just not working hard enough. You're just not trying enough. Okay. What they don't understand is working class outrage because they are experiencing middle class comforts, and they believe that because they've worked for 20 or 30 years and have built up some sort of savings, a little bit of a retirement, and they're comfortable in their middle class life, they don't understand why other people can't just do what they do. They do not see the inherent evils of the capitalist system because they think it's not reality, but they think it's working for them because they think that those breadcrumbs they've been existing on is actually meals, and they will gaslight the fuck out of you if you try to tell them how bad capitalism is, if you try to tell them how much this system isn't working and that they actually deserve more. These are the people who've been in an abusive relationship for so long that they don't even clock it as abuse anymore. They just see it as the way it is, and they're annoyed with you because you keep rocking the boat. Stop rocking the boat. These are the people who, when somebody lights a warehouse on fire, they're going to be like, okay, but you weren't even thinking about the other workers. Now everybody's out of work. Bitch, you're completely missing the point of what this is. We are lighting fire to these buildings of like severe exploitation and wage slavery because the goal is to change the entire system, and you're here worried about a 2-week paycheck, bitch. You don't understand at all what the fuck is going on. Not even going to waste my time talking to you. So, all that to say, the 4 primary weak links during a revolution. We've got men under patriarchy. We've got white Americans under white supremacy. We've got religious people under Christo-fascist supremacy. And we got the house niggas under capitalism. Okay. Now that you know who to watch out for, now that you know who to not engage with as we march forward in this fight for progress, now that you know that, because you're not going to engage with them, right? Now that you know who they are, and these people routinely pop up throughout American history to distract from the cause, now that you know who they are, you're not going to respond to their comments. You're not going to get in knockdown, drag out fights in people's comment sections. You're not going to try to talk your family out of it at family dinner because they're too far gone, and you know that. You know that. In 2026, everybody knows if you're still on the wrong side of history, you're too far gone, you can't be saved. You know that. Now that you know who they are, now that you know what to watch out for, what you need to be doing is reserving your energy so that you have more energy to give to the cause. Stop wasting your energy on these fucking real life trolls, these weak links, and focus on how you can transmute your energy into something effective for the collective. Stop arguing with these dumbass people. Okay, now let's talk about the actual revolutions that are going on right now. We've got class warfare. Luigi lit the flame and y'all have taken it and ran with it. So we've got class warfare that's going on in the States right now. I think we are at 9 or 10 warehouses and factories that have been set on fire because they're literally enslaving people and don't give a fuck whether you live or die, whether your children eat or starve. Okay, we've got women refusing to play along anymore. Birth rates nosediving. Divorce rates skyrocketing. More women are single now than they've ever been in human history, and it's not looking like that's going to change anytime soon. We've got independent journalism that's embarrassing the hell out of mainstream propaganda and reminding all of us of what true journalism is. And this is one of my favorite revolutions because I went to school for journalism. I have a heart for it. I love the field, and it's been bothering me since 2015 or 2016 seeing how bought and paid for all of these media channels are. And that's why I didn't go into broadcast news, because I didn't want somebody else writing my script for me. We've got Iran, China, Russia, etc. Pretty much the BRICS powers, BRICS. If you've not heard of the BRICS, we're talking about Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so they are trying to form a coalition, and they have been for the past few years. Iran is now involved. We've got Iran, China, and Russia toppling the West's abusive stranglehold on power. Abusive, racist stranglehold on power. We've also got the American people turning on Israel left and right, because now we're all waking up to how overly involved Israel's been in almost all of the world's atrocities for about 100 years. So now we're all seeing that Israel is actually Hydra. Crazy. And then there's a dictator that was just rejected in Hungary or done or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of his name. My mama was just telling me about him though. And so we got a dictator that's rejected in Hungary. Got it. These are all of the revolutions that are going on right now, or at least a sample size of the revolutions that are going on right now. And if there's more, please drop it in the comments. I want to know more. Like, I can't name everything because this video is already hella long, and I'm really trying to wrap this up, because what I want to talk about, now that I've named all of these revolutions, and now that we're aware of the weak links that we don't need to engage with and waste our energy on, I want to tell you and basically warn you about the predictable systemic responses that you can expect from the American government as we move further into 2026 and beyond. I just decided, you know what? Instead of trying to cram all of that into one video, I'm just going to make a part 2. So, go to the next one.
I feel like the reason all these artists are canceling their tours, Meghan Trainor, Post Malone, etc., it's not because their music sucks. People will watch anything. It's the same reason why movie theaters are dying. It's the same reason why no one's having any kids. It's the same reason why no one will ever have a house. And it's because no one has any fucking money. Did we just forget that? Why is there always some think piece about, oh, why doesn't Gen Z want to do this? Why is Gen Z killing this industry? People want to have lives. They just can't, because they don't have any fucking money. You think we want to live like this? You think we want to own nothing, and all we have is maybe a little subscription here and there, and eat like shit? No! That's all we can do! You just strangle us our whole lives, and you're like, why aren't you breathing? Why don't you want to breathe? What? You're doing this! You're charging more and more for everything, but you're not paying more! This whole country is just a couple greedy billionaires going, give me more! But it's not enough, because it'll never be enough! They want you to love them, too. Oh, look, I'm at the Met Gala. Aren't I cool? Fuck you! You're the reason that we're in this shit! You're the reason that we can't go to concerts, and we can't go out, and we can't start a family, and we can't own a home. But thank fucking God that we get to see you in a shitty dress and your bald-ass head on the red carpet. So excuse me for not paying $300 to go see Meghan Trainor. I'm sure she's fine. I'm sure she's a great performer. But I'm not gonna see it because I fucking can't! And I don't want to.
This is Antonio Guterres, and he is the United Nations Secretary General. And he's complaining because the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is strangling the global economy. Well, I don't care. And besides, it's not really closed. It's closed to some. And I'm sorry you can't get your Amazon packages in time. And everyone in the West is all of a sudden complaining because gas prices are so expensive and groceries are so expensive and I can't buy my ticket to go on vacation. Iran has been under heavy sanctions for 47 years. For those of you who just don't know or don't care. No food has entered Gaza in 2 months, and there is widespread famine. There is currently a genocide in Gaza. There is currently a genocide in Sudan. There is currently a genocide in the Congo. All courtesy of Western countries. And the United Arab Emirates. Let's not forget that piece of shit. The United Nations has the audacity to complain about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but has not really said anything about anything that I just mentioned. Israel decimated Gaza. They decimated southern Lebanon. They have been bombing all of their neighbors. And I have yet to see an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting. Those rulings actually only apply for countries in the global south, but Western nations like the United States and Israel and Britain and Germany and whomever, they can continue to act with impunity. Your complicity is absolutely sickening, and this hypocrisy is disgusting.
I'm seeing a lot of so-called Palestinian supporters condemning Russia. And it needs to be said that when people demonize Russia but ignore their concrete material conditions, the Western sanctions placed on them designed to cripple their economy, that force them to act in ways we might not like but who do so out of necessity, they're not just being incredibly chauvinistic and showing that they have a surface-level understanding of the global system, but they're also doing empire's work for free. By parroting imperialist talking points, we not only redirect attention away from the empire that is responsible for the genocide of Palestinians, but we also end up providing consent for the constant intervention by the imperial core into states in the periphery. You want Israel destroyed? Great, so do I. But this is going to require an unwavering support for the anti-imperialist bloc, Iran, China, and yes, Russia. They have preserved their sovereignty against US encirclement, developed productive forces under siege, and their very existence weakens the structure that demands Palestinian annihilation. Russia is doing far more to break empire's global domination than any of us in the West are. If you understand that US empire extracts land, water, resources from the global south to maintain their global hegemony and profit maximization, then you also understand that just like Ukraine and Taiwan, Israel is their proxy for ensuring that they have a strategic chokehold in West Asia. Understanding this should lead you to the conclusion that the best thing you can do right now if you want to see a free Palestine is to support the states on the front line fighting imperialism. And if you are living in the imperial core, your task is not symbolic protest. It is the concrete dismantling of your own state's imperial role instead of sitting online condemning the global south's struggle to survive. Saying free Palestine without this analysis is just liberalism while wearing a keffiyeh. So if your goal is moral purity, good for you. But recognize in that choosing this road, you are resigning us all to a position of powerlessness, and by extension, contributing to the ongoing genocide that you keep saying you care about. Do you actually want to win against empire, or do you just want to feel good about yourself? Because if we keep doing things this way, we will never see a free Palestine.
Never let them convince you that broken glass or property damage is violence. Hunger is violence. Poverty is violence. Sanctioning another country is violence. Locking basic human needs behind a paywall is violence. Property can always be replaced. Human lives can't. And under capitalism, we're conditioned to believe that as long as people's lives are destroyed with paperwork and legality, then it doesn't count. Don't fall for that bullshit. The real violence is what the ultra-wealthy do to us and people all around the world every single day.
All right, let's fucking go. State of the world, 90 seconds. Why in the world does anyone who's not a billionaire defend capitalism? It literally means you want billionaires to get richer while the rest of us suffer increasingly. Let alone the fact that infinite growth on finite resources is not logical, it's synonymous with colonialism, and at the top, the stock market is a gambling game that we fund for those who have too much. Profits are privatized while we pay for the loss. Get your head out of your ass and join the resistance. Speaking of resistance, a fleet of ships carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza was attacked off the coast of Greece by a genocidal entity who gives zero fucks about any kind of international law and have now kidnapped humanitarians to interrogate, torture, and imprison without any kind of real legal process. The same entity whose Minister of National Security turned 50 and was gifted a cake by his wife with a noose on it reading "Dreams do come true" to celebrate the new apartheid death penalty law. The same entity annihilating Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Iran, erasing entire peoples while the world doesn't just do nothing, actually enables them continuously. The same entity where 82% of people believe ethnic cleansing is the path to peace, tries children through military courts, directs spies like Epstein all over the world, and celebrates soldiers who rape prisoners. Yeah, it's Israel, by the way, supposedly a totally normal society, bastion of democracy and peace in the Middle East. Totally normal. They're still playing Eurosong. Cool. Cool. Oh, and guys, if you like my work and you want to support me, you can either buy some merch or you can literally buy me the coffee that I rant with. Just, you know, do the clicky things on the linky things. Do The Thing.
So yeah, I'm here to tell y'all that if you do not be for Israel, then you might as well like what? Bitch, that's exactly what we will do. All of y'all, unsubscribe from this motherfucker. Business Insider Political. Fuck your bullshit. Thanks. You just made it easier for us to support more independent media and independent creators. We're gonna support them. We're gonna give that money to them. Yeah. Yeah. Watch who's laughing now. I free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, free all the oppressed. Fuck Israel, fuck USA imperialism, fuck the West, fuck ICE, fuck you motherfucking AI data centers. We know you own shares there too, bitch. And yeah, just like you're watching us, we're watching you too. Your downfall is already unavoidable. Karma. It's a real motherfucking bitch. I really like her. You're gonna regret this, bitch. And we're just here watching. Free Palestine, free Palestine. And I know that pissed you off so much, huh? You little lobbyist motherfucking demonic parasites, huh? Your narrative is dead. This is why this is dying, right? So embarrassing. Yeah. You hate the working class. You hate that we know the truth, that you're a psychopath parasite and you're genocidal. Yeah. You support genocide, apartheid. Fuck you and your fucking lobbyists. Fuck AIPAC. Fuck all these lobbyists. And no, fuck your anti-Semitic shit. Fuck you. And whatever is coming, you deserve it, bitch. Navy billionaire oligarchs who owns shares. Yo, unsubscribe, Telegram, subscribe. Just block. Make him lose money. Give yourself that energy back. Be spiritual like that. By the way, Jesus fought like a motherfucker for socialism. Let's keep it that way. Don't let the Zionist Christians ruin that for us too. Like people like this billionaires should not exist. You know, all that. Yep. This is really gonna piss this motherfucker off, right? Oh well, fuck Israel. Fuck Israel. Fuck Telegram, fuck Business Insider Political, right? Because these are the places where, yeah, that's it. Give yourself that money. Have some fun. Have some fun. Block, unsubscribe. That's it. Make him lose money. You're the cookie. You're the money. You're the source. Make him remember what that means. And just get some popcorn. Or just watch. A lot of you, they're cursing you through words and stuff like that and making you dumbass. They love AI. They love that shit. For a lot of you dupe-ass motherfuckers. No wonder they're bought all these media. They're letting you know that they're duped, that they're fucked. Like, independent media, support independent journalists and contractors and stuff like that, you know? Free Palestine.
At the start of this week, I got an email from a follower and a good friend of mine who said, look, they're talking about what you talk about on Instagram in the New York Times. Isn't that great? And I said, yeah, that's great. And then I started reading the editorial and I was like really pissed off by the second paragraph because this paragraph is a total lie. I had to write back to the person. I was like, just so you know, Hamas didn't commit mass rapes on October 7th. They actually didn't find evidence of any rape on October 7th. And I haven't heard back. And typically that is a conversation ender for a lot of people because that is their understanding of why all of this is going on. And it is. It is atrocity propaganda designed to manufacture consent, just like weapons of mass destruction, just like pulling babies off of incubators in Kuwait. It is completely fabricated. So when we talk about this issue, people go, well, it just seems like something Hamas would do. I find that very hard to believe that they didn't. What do you know about Hamas that wasn't told to you by the people who did this and this and this and this and this? You know, the most prolific liars in the world. I'm not talking about Jews, by the way. However, if you are Jewish and you still stand with Israel, just know that you are aligning yourself with this and this and this. So, what is the truth about what actually happened on October 7th? Well, let's break this down. 40 beheaded babies. Total bullshit. Mass rapes. Total bullshit. 1,200 innocent civilians killed. Total bullshit. There were over 1,000 people, yes. However, hundreds of them were not civilians. They were active duty soldiers. Of the remaining, we have no idea how many Hamas killed or even intended to kill because they were only trying to take hostages. That's bad. Well, hold on a second. Hold that thought. Seriously, okay? They were trying to take hostages, and Israel enacted what they call the Hannibal Directive, where they want people dead rather than being taken hostage. So they fired over 10,000 rounds from helicopters, dropped bombs, fired missiles indiscriminately at their own civilians. Those bombed out cars that you see the photo of very often, Hamas did that? No, they didn't. They did not use paragliders and machine guns to do that. That was Israel. So why did Hamas take these people hostage? By the way, when they were hostage, they wanted them taken care of. They wanted them alive. Why did they want them alive? Because that's what you do with hostages. You have them to exchange them. The reason Hamas took those people hostage is because Israel, prior to October 7th, had over 4,500 Palestinians in detention, 1,300 of whom in administrative detention with no trial. Women and children. What does that make them? Hostages. Hamas was trying to trade hostages for hostages, and knowing what Israel does to Palestinians in detention, I think that's pretty reasonable to try to get those people back.
We had access to more information than any civilization in human history, and we used it chiefly to quarrel with strangers on small glowing rectangles owned by hairless billionaires who'd discovered that they could monetize human misery, vanity, and emotional instability. We had robust scientific data, and we used it to form conspiracy theories, deny climate change, and perfect plastic surgery techniques. We built an economic system that prospered from oil spills, war, cancer, drug addiction, gambling addiction, mental health crisis, but we didn't consider human or environmental health. We also invented social media, and it promptly addicted us, surveilled us, radicalised us, destroyed our attention spans, damaged our children psychologically, and gave teenagers eating disorders. Every 3 years, millions of people would gather in school halls to perform a sacred ritual. They would vote between a small number of very similar-looking men who would go on to lead the country. Having performed this sacred election ritual, voters would spend the following years ignoring politics entirely while binge-watching reality TV and listening to male podcast hosts discuss protein supplements and whether or not women's rights was ruining civilization. We were the only species that actively debated whether or not we should maintain the environmental conditions necessary for our own continued existence. Ensuring the health of things like the atmosphere and forests and oceans would presumably be an obvious priority for a species that rely entirely on those things to survive. But no, environmental debates became so tedious that by the end of it, even the environmentalists were sick of the environment. Children were starving en masse, and though... Sorry. I'm good. Children were starving en masse, and though we had the ability to stop that, we chose not to. A very small number of individuals accumulated more wealth than entire nations, and then they used it to purchase yachts, media companies, private space programs, and often just bought the political system itself. Humans are unique, not in the impressive way like an octopus that can change colours, but like a person that clips their toenails on the bus. We have split the atom, we've cracked the genetic code, and we've hurtled expensive metal objects into space. But when it comes to the question of whether we should keep our own planet habitable and our own people alive, we remain curiously undecided. We have turned the simple matter of survival into an endless controversy. There is nothing inevitable about the way that we run our economies or draft our laws or govern our societies. These systems have no independent existence. They exist because we will them to. They are human constructs. Unlike the laws of nature, like gravity, for example, which applies equally to everyone, human-made systems like economics, law, and politics are made up and often structured to the advantage of a small and select group of people. And that is why gravity applies to everybody, but tax loopholes do not.
This Saturday is the Unite the Kingdom rally, where select representatives of the Mayanese people will emerge from their habitat and descend upon our nation's capital to engage in public urination and get ripped off their faces. It will be a religious experience for some. They will be connecting to notions of traditional Britishness and whiteness, entirely copy-paste derived from far-right white nationalist American podcasters and YouTubers. Young men will say things like, Christ is King, which is about the same amount of words of gospel as they can quote off the top of their heads. On the same day, the Palestine Coalition has a march to commemorate Nakba Day. Nakba Day honors the Nakba, which is the initial series of atrocity events carried out by Zionist paramilitaries in Mandatory Palestine. The European settlers went around and violently ethnically cleansed about 80% of the indigenous population off of about 78% of the land of historic Palestine. Tensions will be high, by which I mean the former will say to the latter shit that is anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-woman, transphobic, homophobic. The latter being a group that is far more representative of wider British society, with the former looking more like a box of Tic Tacs. I don't mean the green and orange Tic Tacs, I don't mean the yellow and red Tic Tacs, you know which ones I mean. Now this is a particularly interesting turn of events, given the so-called Palestine question is largely a problem that is the creation of the British, who began this project of settler colonialism about a century ago and have since supported the extermination and ethnic cleansing of millions of people in Palestine and the region. I say all of this as a preface to say that in April 2026, the Human Development Index said that the scale of destruction in the Gaza Strip as a result of Israel's genocide has pushed back human development in the Gaza Strip by 77 years, which if you subtract from 2026 happens to coincide with the year that is formally recognized as the end of the initial period of the Nakba, 1949. And you often hear people say the phrase, the Nakba never ended because of Israel's continued violence and ethnic cleansing and their MO of trying to steal as much of the land as possible with as few of the indigenous population on it as possible. And so when I read this, I found it rather shocking because that statement, the Nakba never ended, is not merely a symbolic statement. At the end of 1947 and the beginning of 1948, Zionist paramilitaries began the process of violently ethnically cleansing the indigenous population of Palestine. In May 1948, these militias literally formed the IDF, who continued with the process of the ethnic cleansing of about 80% of the indigenous population of what Israelis today call Israel. Since then, Israelis have hung 1948 over the head of Palestinians, and today it's as if they have transported them immediately back there. When we say the Nakba never ended, it's not symbolic. They have literally, materially destroyed 77 years of history here. For the better part of a century, Zionist militias, with their sponsor, facilitator, and ally, the British state, have kept Palestinians in a perpetual, recurring Nakba.
I'm afraid the New York Times is at it again. Let's talk about how the New York Times uses reporting that at the outset looks great and necessary, but actually functions as a means to obscure and obfuscate its own direct culpability in war crimes against Palestinians. You might have seen this article in the New York Times by Nicholas Kristof, which explores sexual violence against Palestinians at the hands of Israeli occupational forces. The article is built off of testimonies from Palestinians themselves who suffered this horrific sexual violence. And of course, none of this is new. Sexual violence against Palestinians, men, boys, women, girls, has been an intimate part of the Israeli occupation for 8 decades. Nicholas Kristof has spent the last 2.5 years being pretty mealy-mouthed when it comes to the genocide itself, right? And that's really interesting for someone who for a very long time was recognized and read as this kind of like authoritative voice on all things humanitarian, on genocide, especially when it came to Darfur. Like, I remember being in college and how big of a deal Kristof was in kind of pushing and creating that narrative for American English-speaking audiences. But look what he did in this article. For you to accept the New York Times reporting on sexual violence against Palestinians, which has been documented for decades, for which we have direct testimony from victims themselves, you have to also accept that the Israeli claim that Israeli women were raped on October 7th. This is the same claim for which not a single testimony has been given. This is the same claim that the New York Times in December of 2023 published a piece on called Screams Without Words, a piece that has been thoroughly debunked. And they have yet to issue any kind of a retraction or statement or anything of that sort. I totally understand how this can also play, this type of an article, this type of reporting can play a different function, right? Which is that now all of a sudden your liberal, normie, neighbor, friend, whatever, is going to be like, oh, well, it must be true if the New York Times says it. I get it. But the harm outweighs the good. The harm is that it allows the New York Times to once again wash its hands of even the accusations that it was directly culpable in war crimes against Palestinians.
The New York Times switching up on Israel is an insane thing to witness for both good and bad reasons. Like, yeah, sure, your coverage correcting course after decades of propaganda is inherently positive, but like, don't think we're gonna forget what you spent all those decades doing. You and your writers have systematically denied the genocide was even happening, echoed the idea that they had a right to do it, and moreover that they should actually be applauded for doing it because they're fighting anti-Semitism, which honestly is kind of funny because Israeli settlers are not Semitic. You know who is though? Palestinians. Ha! Who's being anti-Semitic now? But now that the demented playbook of claiming anti-Semitism as a trick to protect Israel from criticism has been aired out by a former Israeli minister, it seems you're changing your tune. It's truly gonna be crazy watching all these publications, all these people who sat by silently watching Israel commit this century's Holocaust start claiming that they were always on the right side of history. And sure, they can try to convince themselves and everyone else that they were always good, moral people. But I want all of them to know, we will remember. I, personally, will remember. And perhaps more damning than any one person's memory, the internet will remember. Everyone will remember that you sided with barbaric Nazis over a group of people who were systematically abused, tortured, raped, starved, killed, and ethnically cleansed for the last 80 years. So if you find yourself in the near future looking around and thinking that there isn't anyone left to call you out for lying about your support of or indifference to this century's Holocaust, well, that must mean I'm dead, because I will make it my life's mission to make sure that not only your reputation has a permanently stained scarlet G on it, but that what you did is crystallized in the annals of history and is remembered by everyone, including you. So sure, by all means, keep it up, New York Times. It's really past time, but just know, we won't forget. The Palestinians you and every other major publication have been lying about certainly won't.
Palantir in Gaza. Palantir in southern Lebanon. Like, I think people don't realize this, that the reason that our political class, both Democrats and Republicans alike, remain so beholden to Israel is not just because we tacitly endorse the genocidal campaign in Gaza, but specifically because we're using Israel as a way to experiment on human test subjects with the integration of AI into target acquisition processes. And there's whistleblowers from within Israel who have talked about this, that sometimes the decision on whether or not to kill someone can be made in as little as 20 seconds, and that the targets are being acquired so rapidly that there's basically no oversight. And when we talk about the targeted killings of, journalists, humanitarian workers, children and civilians, etc., it's not just random. It's because these systems are being developed and like, from what I've read, there can be a 10% error rate. And so Israel is developing a system that can be employed globally, that our political class and military industrial complex can benefit from. And that is why we remain beholden to the Israeli right. And so I think that we have to do everything we can to stand against this, to say that it is not only morally abhorrent, but in our own interest to stop this, because it is one of the most dangerous things and one of the most evil things that has ever been developed in the history of human warfare.
There was a school shooting just weeks ago that I'm sure none of you were aware of. A shooting which left a 14-year-old child and a parent that ran to help dead. But you don't know about it or possibly even care because it happened in the West Bank of Palestine. In a town facing daily attacks where an Israeli army reservist can open fire on a school and walk away freely. Where school buildings are bulldozed, where illegal settlers deploy razor wire to block children from attending. In Cincinnati, where we're forced to be proud of safe sleep lots for our school children, where access to education is in question, where families struggle to make ends meet, it should disgust all of us to know our taxes are instead spent on denying access to education in Palestine, spent on making every step of the way for students there unsafe, spent on bombing and destroying every school in Gaza. Just yesterday, 2 paramedics were murdered, but you don't know or care because they were murdered in Lebanon. They were responding to an earlier bombing in an attempt to save lives, when Israel used an illegal double-tap strike to murder these 2, adding to the more than 100 healthcare workers killed in Lebanon, and to the more than 1,700 killed in Gaza. Our nation that can't fund our healthcare can pay to kill those providing healthcare elsewhere, can pay to bomb every hospital in Gaza. For people that ostensibly care where weapons go and what rules they violate, you should care more that our continued support of this genocidal apartheid state violates the U.S. Foreign Assistance Act and the Leahy laws. It's not just that our dollars are spent on war crimes and human rights violations. These are dollars denied to us, the taxpayers. As life becomes more and more difficult to afford, our officials send our money to destroy lives there instead of improving lives here. You imagine yourselves to be larger politicians of tomorrow, but the voters you'll depend on need to see a difference today. Instead, we have a council that believes companies that participated in these crimes are more deserving of $40 million than the people of Cincinnati. A council that can't address its own Islamophobia. A council that only takes days to speak for Ukraine or Israel, but when the victims are Arab, can watch for years without a shred of that same concern. This isn't the leadership of tomorrow. This is the shame of today.
After 1948 Nakba, when 1 million Palestinians left their homes and villages without anything, education became the only hope to resist being cut off from their history and lives and having their future stolen. Israel, of course, sees this as a real threat. That's why Israel has been committing a scholasticide in Gaza Strip for 2.5 years now, by destroying 97% of the educational buildings, all the universities, killing 17,000 students, over 700 teachers and professors, and depriving 658,000 students of 3 academic years in a row. Is the history repeating itself? Are the Palestinians now learning intense even for a small amount of children? This is the most unexpected place for a school. We're now in Beit Lahia al-Mashru' or project of Beit Lahia, and we are very close to the yellow line. Why the yellow line? Because existence is resistance, and because if these lands are empty, if the people of these lands are uneducated, these lands will be taken and no one will hear or know about it. Let's see the school. This school is called the Shamal School. About 400 to 450 students are here every day to get the only education opportunity they can get in the whole north. I'm saying that because of the bombing around the area, there's no schools working, there's no international organizations supplying anything here. By the way, the school staff is fully volunteering in this school.
When we hear the sound of bombing, we try to be relaxed, not to make our children or students feel fear and still come to school. We told them, when you hear a bombing or something like that, and we will feel fear, just be near to your students and take his hand, or put yourself on the earth. They told us, I wanted to go to my home, I need my mom. Some students start to cry. We have 2 years, approximately 2 years, the students do not go to school. And we miss to teach our students, we miss to come back to the education. And the whole students put in their mind, I wanted to go to filling water, I wanted to help my dad. The idea is that we wanted to change this concept.
The school lost a student. Her name is Sham. She was 8 years old and she got shot in her way to the school because there is bombing very close to here. The school is dangerous, but yet no other options for anyone here.
Techno-fascism is here. It's not coming. It's not on the rise. It's here now. You need to understand this. Whether you are left, center, or right, it will not spare you from what's coming. If you're on the left, they're already working on criminalizing the ideology. They see us as a threat, so buckle up. If you're on the right or the center, listen to me. Please listen to me. They might see you as useful right now, but as soon as they get what they're working towards, you will be cattle. You will be their peasants. The Republican Party and their Führer are hand in hand with the billionaire Epstein class. They are establishing a big brother surveillance police state with Palantir. They're working on replacing everybody with AI to establish a new feudal society with the 1% ruling over us. Congress has been neutered, rendering the voices of the people silenced. They are starting wars the people do not stand behind and repeatedly threatening the use of nuclear force. They are purging the country of immigrants with ICE. They are disenfranchising African Americans at 1960s levels once again, and the Supreme Court is propping it all up. They are not going to stop. They refuse to follow laws or reason. They are hypocrites. They are liars. They are evil. We, the people, need to act.
Occupation is talking about a greater Israel. At the same time, the Board of Peace is talking about rebuilding Gaza, the disarmament, the entry of the international forces, and the illusion of tourism destinations over the graveyards of our children. Since Gaza is in the middle of their greater Israel, the question here is how and who to believe. For us, it doesn't look like a peace deal. It looks like a trap. However, this is not even the worst thing. Israel is actually distributing responsibility, as now every single country contributing in the implementation of this plan will be a strategic partner in the genocide, especially in the long term, and will have helped war criminals to escape accountability. Anyways, the Board of Peace did not do anything for Gazans so far. Actually, the situation keeps deteriorating every single day. A Board of Peace is not the solution. A Board of us, Palestinians, is. As ridiculous and unacceptable as this may seem for anyone with the slightest bit of logical thinking, this is what the Board of Businessmen and Investors is drawing up for the future of Gaza. But let's see what the indigenous Palestinians have to say about the Board of Peace.
شو رأيك في مجلس السلام يعني؟
هذا مجلس السلام كذب على الضعفاء، بس على الأقوياء لا. ما فيش مجلس سلام على الأقوياء، على بس على الضعفاء. اللي زي غزة، اللي زي هاي إيران فيها مجلس سلام، إسرائيل بدها سلام، أمريكا بدها سلام.
لو حكوا لك بدهم ياخذوا أرضك مكان ما هي موجودة في الشجاعية، خلينا نحكي على حسب معرفتي فيها، بدهم يعطوك شقة ولا أرض في مكان تاني، احكي لنا عن هذا الموضوع.
أنا ما أرضاش، أنا بدي أرضي ملكي تحت أجدادي، هذه أرض أجدادي، كيف أفرط فيها؟ مش معي اللي فرطنا في 67 واللي ورا كمان في غزة أفرط فيها.
بالنسبة لمجلس السلام يعني احنا قلنا قد يكون بادرة خير، ولكن هو للأسف لحتى الآن يعني ولا أي مهام ولا أي شيء، حتى في الحكي اللي حكوه بالبداية ما صارش إشي على أرض الواقع. وبالمناسبة يعني احنا سمعنا وعود كتير، لكن هو رئيس ترامب هو نفس ذاته غرقان بالكذب والنصب على العالم.
يعني الناس يعني لها سنتين متحمله اللي هي فيه، اللي راح استشهد اولاده واللي راح بيته واللي راح مستقبله واللي راح تجارته، تيجي انت في الاخر تقول له هذا بكره رباح وانا بدي اعطيك هالقد، يعني يسكنوا زي ما بنسمع انه يسكنوا مكان كامل او حي كامل في مبنى سكني لحاله، وهذا ينسى ارضه ينسى حاله ينسى ماله وتراثه.
Hi, I'm reporting to you from Kfar Raman in Nabatea, which is a forced displacement area. It was hit yesterday with 3 violent airstrikes down the road here. This is as close as we can safely get, but the town did sustain some massive destruction.
Today, the Israeli army issued forced displacement orders for 8 more towns north of the Litani River and has carried out multiple airstrikes and drone strikes already this morning, including an attack on an ambulance center in Kasaibe. Lebanese and Israeli delegations are due to begin a third round of talks today in Washington, just days before the current ceasefire is set to expire. Typically during these types of talks, in my experience at least, the Israeli army escalates violent attacks in Lebanon, so let's see how these days play out. But today, I can tell you, like every other day, started off violently with several people already being killed in attacks in Lebanon. And yesterday, I actually read a statement that said something to the effect of, Lebanon has a Hezbollah problem, or they have an Iran problem, or something like that. And I just want to state again that as a witness, the only entity that I have seen for the last 18 months committing acts of genocide, committing acts of ethnic cleansing against the Lebanese people is the Israeli army.
So, part 2, as I was saying, that protection matter enormously for a company scaling up production in a wartime environment. So this company needs to be constantly be wars, genocide, constantly, right? So again, keeping a working class and constantly stress, fear, mongering, also bumping a bunch of conspiracy motherfucking shit, and most of them are true, most of them are not. So this is why you have to use discernment. But there's no better place to really listen and see how vile and their impunity is by looking at their marketing articles that they write about their companies, that we already know that these motherfuckers literally, they don't give a fuck about all of y'all. And this is why I'm telling y'all that class consciousness is vital, okay? Because they're expecting all of you to be dumbasses. They're literally publishing their plan, what will happen if this doesn't work out, who did they, obviously the Congress, this is why they're, and a lot of you, this is not the same system here in Canada, but I'm just saying for the USA, you know, whoever's in Congress, and so there's a reason why they put that fucking Cheeto in there, is, to support the white supremacy motherfucking all their shit. So, it removes the financial exposure that has historically made defense construction cautious about committing capital to rapid production ramps up, and it signals a Pentagon leadership willing to share risk in exchange for speed. Oh. Lockheed Martin Iran war contracts are already flowing. Oh. Without Iranian consent, huh? It really hasn't been done before, Tucker said, and that's because the leadership of the department at this point is willing to engage in topics such as risk mitigation. Oh, I wonder what that risk mitigation is. Could it be like resistance, like, pro-Palestine, and, and using the whole propaganda bullshit and the whole like, oh, if you're pro-Palestine or anti-genocide, you are anti-Semitic, right? That kind of risk mitigation, that kind of thing. The Iran conflict has been direct catalyst for Lockheed Martin contract activity, and the number reflected. Oh, so the number of deaths and children that they have murdered, the infrastructure that they have, like, Iran is right. They're asking for reparation for all the damage they did in this war, and they're right to ask for it. But this motherfucker, Lockheed Martin CEO, they know that they have to pay up, right? He wrote this during the time that the war was happening. So I feel like there's some type of reputation management control very soon, but that's just, my intuitive and psychic abilities working here. Since the start of the conflict, the Pentagon has established multiple new contracts with the Lockheed Martin in addition to existing agreements. Also Palantir as well. Don't forget about that. I'm a little motherfucker, right? Earlier this month alone, 2 major awards landed according to the company's earning materials. Oh, they reward themselves for all the war crimes and all the people that they have murdered. Wow. Capitalists, huh? They really expose themselves. So I just want to remind you all that this is during the war and the bombing and stuff. According to Lockheed Martin, April earnings released first quarter 2026 result included sales. Whoa, roughly in line. Sorry, I didn't put that incorrect. So sales 18 billion, roughly in line with Q1 2025. Net earnings at 1.5 billion or 6.4 per share. Cash from operation of 220 million, free cash flow of 291 million. Full year 2026 financial outlook reaffirmed. Lockheed Martin first quarter. Like literally they're exposing themselves. They don't, it's pure impunity. These people are psychos. The company makes profit expectation primarily due to lower volumes in its F-16 fighter jet program and other classified programs. We also know that Canadian is involved in this. We know that there's some loophole going on. So this is not just all the USA. Let's just keep it for real. And yeah. Free cash flow was a notable step back from the 950 million delivered 2025, driven largely by working capital timing and 511 million in capital expenditures. The earning release revealed. This is important. For those of you watching defense spending, this is important. The Trump administration has proposed 1.5 trillion Pentagon budget, a 445 billion increase from last year, but it hasn't passed Congress yet. The Iran war funding is being pursued separately through budget reconciliation legislation. Neither is guaranteed according to whatever. But listen to this. But Lockheed Martin isn't waiting. The contract wins already arriving. The production framework agreement are signed, and the CEO is publicly framing the correct environment. You know, the propaganda, all the shit, and all the blah blah blah. You know, as a generational inflection point for the business. Everything is a business. When you live in a capitalist system, everything is a business. It's a death cult. So I'm just reading you from one of his minions, from a demonic motherfucking psychopath, their own article, so you can see it. I'll put it here in the description so you know, so you can read it too. For you as an investor, because that's their target audience, you know, all their psychopath killers and shareholders, you know. There's a lot of people with pensions as well, I heard. Experience keeps saying. I'm going to show you also another video next to this that very interesting to look at. Please support independent journalists, okay? But to continue this, for you as an investor, Lockheed Martin's story in 2026 is about whether the Pentagon's willingness to adopt commercial contracting structures combined with sustained defense spending driven by the Iran conflict translate into the kind of earnings acceleration that stocks' relatively modest return haven't yet reflected. Everything is connected. They're all connected to each other. Palantir's front company now has its tentacles in the food supply or healthcare data, or growing autonomous weapon industry, the military, the entire U.S. intelligence community, border patrol, space force, and so on. Palantir is soon to become this term. Anyways, I just want to make this clear. This right here, billionaires should not exist. It's the way right now. I don't. And yeah, a lot of you need to watch what's going on in Canada and everywhere else, especially Canadians. Like Carney is fucking selling all of y'all to these tech bros, billionaires. And the exact same ones that show up in China with Trump are the same ones who have other, companies and other situation going on here in Canada. Just saying. Anyways, I'm going to leave you with this video for you guys to watch, especially those who live in Quebec, Montreal. You need to be aware of this. A lot of us who live in neighborhoods were invaded by Zionist motherfucking weird-ass energy. You need to know this, and we need to speak up about this. Stay in silence is complicity and enables these knockouts to continue, not just obviously in Palestine, but also every other parts of the world. Please look at my reposts. Please look at what's going on here on Obscuro and all of my other accounts, okay? Don't be naive. Stay informed. Stay educated. All you guys, pedophiles and psychopaths, are expecting you to stay conform and silent. Do not do that. Revolt. Nobody's coming to fix our situation. No system built against you will suddenly save you. The solution has always been in our hands. The question is, are we ready to act on it? Remember Malcolm X. Go read some revolutionary fighters.
Perhaps one of the most evil parts about capitalism is that investing in genocide pays off, at least in the short term. There are over 6 million Quebecers whose retirement savings are tied up with Quebec's pension fund, the CDPQ. It's a good pension fund. It got a 9.3% return on investment last year. That's the same as the Canadian pension plan. But when you take a closer look at the $150 billion that Quebec has invested in the stock market, you start to realize that these gains come with a moral cost. And what is that moral cost? Well, Quebec has $112 million tied up in L3Harris. That's a technology company that manufactures parts for the F-35, specifically F-35 jets used by the Israeli military in Gaza, where they dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps and civilian areas, killing countless women and children. But the plus side is, it's been a great return on our investment. At the beginning of the conflict, L3's shares were going for $177 a piece. If you were wise enough to get in on the ground floor of all that slaughter, you would have seen your investment nearly double. Just last week, L3 was trading for $303 a share. You want to talk about monster deals? And I'm not just talking monster as in you murdered all those women and children, you heartless monster. I'm talking about business monster deals. The pension fund in the last quarter increased its investments in Howmet Aerospace by 12%. Howmet also manufactures F-35 parts and sells them to the Israeli military. Since the beginning of the conflict, Howmet's shares have gone from about $44 a piece to $272. That is basically a 7-fold increase. And all we had to do was look the other way. Here's another banger, Raytheon Technologies. They make interceptor missiles used by the Iron Dome and laser-guided bombs. Well, Quebec increased its holdings in Raytheon by 74% over the last quarter. When I say Quebec, I mean the pension plan. And why wouldn't they do it? Their stock went from about $73 after the Hamas attack to $178 just the other day. And if you're wondering, oh my God, how do I fucking sleep at night? Well, it's easy. I go on Amazon.com and I order a shitload of melatonin. Amazon, by the way, is the recipient of $1.3 billion in investments from our pension fund. And Amazon has a $1.2 billion contract with the Israeli government, specifically offering them and their military cloud computing services with Google, who is another recipient of the pension fund's investments. $2 billion to be precise. What really ticks me off about this is that for a lot of retirees, the difference between having a livable retirement and surviving on cat food is how well your pension fund does. We see the immorality of some of these investments. And what makes this even crazier is that we are funding chaos halfway around the world, slaughter that causes this refugee crisis. And then when these people come here, we have ministers who say, on peut pas accueillir toute la misère du monde. Well, it seems like we can profit from it, so.
Growing up is realizing that the United States is evil because the U.S. will starve, isolate, and impoverish anybody that defies its dominance, doing so for decades, and then point to those countries and say, look, this is what happens when you're not like us. You live in starvation, isolation, and poverty. And our government sustains this cruelty on the contradiction that these poor, weak, beleaguered people are also somehow an existential threat to themselves and us, meaning their way of life must be eliminated if they will not assimilate to American dominance. And what sustains my hope for humanity is that the U.S. will do this. It will cause the intended human suffering, and yet those people will defy our dominance anyway, building a society that maybe doesn't look like ours, but maybe is one that they want to live in. Because maybe Cubans can't own 600 pieces of plastic junk per person, but everybody gets to have a home. Maybe they can't all watch Chicago Fire, Law, Med, PD, TSA, Sewer and Sanitation, but they all have healthcare, to the point where they're exporting it to the world. And we have the audacity to call these countries failing, when in fact they are succeeding under remarkable oppression for decades. And the only country that is failing is ours, because unlike the Cubans, we don't have a government worth fighting for. And despite all its wealth and power, our government will crumble before Cuba's does.
Every Israeli company, until proven otherwise, is complicit in Israel's occupation, apartheid, and genocide against Palestinians, a 78-year-old settler colonial regime. But some were complicit from the very beginning, before and during the Nakba, the forced expulsion of approximately 750,000 indigenous Palestinians from their homes in 1948. Today, as we remember the Nakba, we focus on some of these companies that remain in operation and call on people worldwide to escalate BDS pressure against them. 𝓂𝆃It, the national pharmaceutical company of Israel, was established in 1901. Its founding CEO took part in the 1948 Nakba and fought in every major Israeli colonial war. Today, 𝓂𝆃It profits from a captive Palestinian economy under illegal military occupation. It is also one of the major companies responsible for the opioid epidemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. It has used bribery to illegally capture its market share. For these reasons and more, 𝓂𝆃It is a priority BDS target. Mekorot, the Israel National Water Company, is responsible for robbery, colonization, and water apartheid against Palestinians. Founded in 1937, Mekorot's aim was to steal water from Palestinian communities and neighboring states to reroute it to Zionist colonial settlements and households. Today, Mekorot is expanding globally, and BDS activists are campaigning against it across the globe. Zim is Israel's largest and oldest cargo shipping company, founded in 1945. In the company's own words, their early fleets were used to deliver essential supplies to Zionist militias during the 1948 ethnic cleansing of Palestine and the early years of Israel's establishment. Zim, which was recently sold to Germany's Hapag-Lloyd, remains fundamental in supplying Israel's settled colonial system, including its genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Bank Hapoalim was founded in 1921 by the Histadrut and the Zionist organization, two central institutions of the Zionist settled colonial project in Palestine. It operates and finances projects in illegal Israeli settlements, finances military projects, and exploits the Palestinian captive market. The BDS movement has consistently called for divestment from Bank Hapoalim and other complicit Israeli banks. Bank Leumi was founded in 1902 by the first Zionist leaders and was the financial arm of the settler colonial project in Palestine. It still finances construction in illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, and together with Hapoalim has financed projects in the Jerusalem Light Rail that serve Israel illegal settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. And like Hapoalim, it exploits the Palestinian captive market under occupation. The Nakba was, and still is, built on the complicity of not just states, but also corporations and institutions. Ending the Nakba necessitates ending that complicity. And ending complicity means BDS. Join us.
Okay, let me say this as directly as I can. It is not the Nakba of 1948. It is the Nakba of the present. It just so happens that it started in 1948 with the brutal mass rapes, murders, and displacement of 750,000 Palestinians by the terrorist European Jewish supremacists that infiltrated our land. We are living the Nakba right now, only 1 million-fold in hyperspeed on live stream. The Nakba never ended. And the funny thing is, I'll bet you've all encountered Zionists and their lackey politicians denying the Nakba ever happened, when you've got Israelis themselves celebrating the Nakba out in the open. Israel's Ministry of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, going on live TV and commending the Israeli soldiers for their role in the Nakba in 1948, describing it as a moment of triumph over Arabs. Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, calling for another Nakba. Israel's security cabinet member under Netanyahu's Likud party said, and I quote, "We're rolling out Nakba 2023. Israel Knesset member, also under Netanyahu's Likud party, Ariel Kalner, literally saying in a post he published, and I quote, "Right now, one goal, Nakba. A Nakba that will overshadow the Nakba of 48. Nakba in Gaza and Nakba for anyone who dares to join." He is literally threatening the world of enacting a Nakba on you if you join the fight with the Palestinians. Literally just yesterday, terrorist Israeli settlers stormed Jerusalem's old city and the Al-Aqsa compound, terrorizing Palestinian shops while screaming death to Arabs and calling for the destruction of Al-Aqsa, only to then take a picture together with a banner that says, "You will get the Nakba. This is not Al-Aqsa. This is the Temple Mount." And if you are thinking this is just a select few extremist Israelis, think again. Because if you aren't specifically hearing the word Nakba from Israeli and Zionist diaspora society, it doesn't mean that they don't want it to continue happening. Because they tell you themselves, 82% of Israelis favor expelling Palestinians from Gaza. 82% of Israelis favor ethnic cleansing. 82% of Israelis favor our continued Nakba. So don't you dare tell me the Nakba ever ended. The Nakba never left. And not only are we seeing it with our own eyes, but they are openly calling for it and celebrating it under the guise of their fucking Independence Day. So no, I will not observe today as a Nakba Remembrance Day. I will live every day as my Nakba Remembrance Day because we are living the Nakba right now.